Greetings, everyone. Welcome to CRWS, Racism in Plain Sight broadcast discussing Christmas, Christmas, or correctly should be termed a horror day that has been disguised as things known as holidays. So I'm going to be playing a intro by Ishaka Musa Barashango. And I hope this broadcast will motivate folks to begin to understand what racism, white supremacy is and how it works, and to motivate folks to stop celebrating horror days, so-called holidays, especially the one known as Christmas. And I hope the information here will be seen as logical and constructive. If it is, like, comment, and subscribe and share. So I'm gonna get us started.
I tell you, it's a mental genocide. It's insane. And you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the first thing you have to do is stand up and say, what? I'm alcoholic. First thing we got, all of us, including the Shaka Musa Barashango, I'm sick. I am mentally ill. Because ain't nobody passed through this that is not mentally ill. I just didn't learn how to turn my craziness on my enemy. But I tell you in a minute, I'm crazy. I'm nutty as a fruitcake. But I won't turn it on me or my people. I turn it on my enemy. When the white man said, that's a crazy nigga, that's a compliment to me. Because if I seem sane to him, something wrong with me. Because I fit into his definition of sanity. And that's insane. But then the other part is the trust that your children lose in you, and you wonder when they get to adolescence and teenage why they don't have any faith in you anymore. And one of the things is the most trusted people on earth, they find out lied to them. My mother, whom I love, peace be upon her, was one of the sweetest and most beautiful women I've ever met until the day I met my beloved wife. And that woman, I trusted her for everything. She was my grandmother. When my mother passed away when I was a year old, she took care of me. She washed white folks' dirty clothes. She cleaned their bathrooms. She did everything to make sure that I was fed and taken good care of. She was a wonderful woman indeed, and I loved her and trusted everything she said. And I was outside one time in Richard Allen City, Misnomet, Philadelphia, hanging on the corner. And I'm 13 years old, still talking about Santa Claus. They say, grow up. There ain't no Santa Claus. And I got in a fight with my Walkman. Eh? My homies, we got to throwing down because I said my mama wouldn't lie. There is a Santa Claus. So I got tired of getting my butt whipped. So I went home and asked the source. I said, Mama, is there a Santa Claus? And she got the ring in her hand and going through all kind of anxiety. Do y'all know anything about this? All kind of anxiety and torture. And then she had to tell me there wasn't none. And then in my heart, I couldn't believe it. My mama had lied to me. That hurt me. It took me a while to get over that. But the thing is, I don't understand why she lied. Why? Why? Do we tell our children that the white man did something for them that he didn't do? Why do we tell them that he can fit his big old fat funky butt down the chimney that many of us don't even have? Two more, I'm through. I don't have much further to go. I'm gonna deal with Easter, the festival of fools. Now, you messing with, you done gone too far, Shaka Musa. You messing with my Jesus now, you trying to take my Jesus from, no. I'm trying to make him real for you. Trying to make him your Jesus. You got somebody else's Jesus. You don't have your Jesus. That white man Jesus, that ain't yours. That's not the Jesus of history. But there's one major question I want to put out here to y'all. Would you please help me? I need help because the Shaka Musa Barashango don't know everything. And I'll be the first to admit it. The one question I got to ask you about Easter is, when is it?
Alrighty. So that was the intro. Now I'm gonna share this screen and go over some of my notes that I took in from the Christmas, Deathmas, Christmas section of this book, African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide. And I thought it was very, very significant and just so incredible and jam-packed with constructive information. So getting started, we have here from page 58. In reality, what is Christmas? The term Christmas comes from the Old English Chris mice, which is supposed to mean literally the celebration of the birthday of Christ, whom a correct study of history clearly reveals to be a Black Messiah. This designation for Christmas was first used in the 11th century of the Christian era. It is important for us to keep this fact in mind because many of us believe that on this day Jesus was born. His mother looked like his father and said, "Let's celebrate Christmas." When in actuality, the word Christmas did not come on the scene until some 10 centuries. That is over 1,000 years after the birth of Jesus. Another definition of Christmas was, which many of us declare and sing so joyfully, is the French word Noel. The word in turn is derived from the Latin natalis, meaning birth, from we get the modern day expression nativity, on which at mere mention throws many people into a state of mysticism and adoration as they start hearing angelic choirs singing, "O come ye faithful," and their first Noel. When in reality, the word simply means birth, a phenomenon quite common to the human experience. So I think it's really important that he's going into the etymology of the word Christmas, because as I learned through reading this, words have a lot of significance, and they all have been derived from white values and white culture. And just basically they support the system of white supremacy, these celebrations, and the combination of words we've been taught to use. So I think that's why I'm reading this. I think the etymology and the history is quite important in helping us to understand the origins of this death day disguised as a holiday known as Christmas. So continuing, next we come to a German word, why not, meaning holy night. Another German terminology used in reference to Christmas season is Kringle, denoting birth of the Christ child. Could that mean white child? Nah, that's what I decoded as. Anyways, continuing. Kringle is generally portrayed as a jolly fat elf with a long white beard, donning a red suit. He transports himself through the air in a sled pulled by reindeer. Now, wouldn't you say this is a fair indication that the creator of this fantasy really intended to mess with people's minds? For it behooves me as to how a jolly fat elf flying all over Europe in a sled drawn by a reindeer, and the Christ child who is said to have been born in a manger and grew up in Palestine to become a great prophet among his people can be one and the same. So it's really, really just a nonsensical fantasy, the origins of Christianity. And yeah, we will see that it's also as its entire concept, not the Santa Claus nonsense, but the entire concept of Jesus and Christianity religion is a stolen concept from white people have classified as Black, also known as Ethiopians or Egyptians or just ancient Black people, however we want to refer to them. But Christianity is a stolen, plagiarized concept that white people have plagiarized and stole from Black people, non-white people, known as people with color in their skins. So I'm just going to go straight to where a white person says it. But he goes into a lot of detail. I'm also going to break down more of what this Christmas holiday, horror day means. So Will Durant writes, who was a historian and American writer, white person, white man. Will Durant writes, paganism survived in the moral sense as a joyous indulgence of natural appetites. As a religion, it remained only in the form of ancient rites and customs, condoned or accepted and transformed by an indulgent church. An intimate and trustful worship of saints replaced the cults of the pagan gods and satisfy a congenial polytheism of simple reporting minds. Statues of Isis and Horus were renamed Mary and Jesus. The Roman Lupercalia and the Feast of the Purification of Isis became the Feast of Nativity. The Saturnalia were replaced by Christmas celebration. So that has that Christianity. And as we learn about Saturnalia, it's quite disturbing to say the least. So we see here, Saturnalia Christmas. On the second day of Bacchanalian celebration of Saturnalia, young pigs were offered on the altar and blood pudding was made. This disgusting dish was a prime delicacy of the European, a people who once painted themselves blue. This is where the term blue blood comes from, and ran naked from cave to cave, busting each other in the head with clubs and engaging in combat over a piece of raw meat. When Africans were building their pyramids and wooing their ebony queens and with incense and love poems, many Europeans were making overtures to their women by grunting, smacking them upside their heads with clubs and dragging them off by the hair to copulate. This is why rape is such a sensationalized phenomenon in European culture. During the 6th day of festival in Saturnalia, slaves were temporarily freed to attend the festival. It is said that during the season, the slaveholder would grant the slave any request except his freedom. Also during this period, the roles were supposedly reversed, and the slave vicariously walked in the shoes of the master who had served him his breakfast and bed and many other amenities which custom obliged. But when the festival was over, a slave in the Roman Empire was still a slave. The Saturnalia, which later became known as Christmas, was one time referred to as the Festival of Fools. So I'm going to continue more into the history and origin of Saturnalia, aka Christmas, Xmas, the cheery holiday season, however you want to describe this nonsense, this white supremacy propaganda. So yeah, at Christmas time, many towns and chateaus appointed a lord of Misrule to organize pastimes and spectacles for the populace. Mummers in masks and beards and jarly garb went about performing street plays or pranks or singing Christmas carols. Houses and churches were decked with holly, ivy, and whatsoever the season afforded to be green. Picture this scene, if you will. The Festival of Fools led by the Lord of Misrule with pale skin, people wrapped in layers of swaddling rags and animal skins, aping up and down in snowing streets, gorging themselves on blood pudding while threads of blood, rare meat caked their teeth and hung out of the sides of their mouths, as the stench of thousands who hadn't taken baths for months or even years filled the air. This, from what we can garner of the present data available to us, is a historical portrait. It is a part of the European heritage, which in turn is part and parcel of the heritage of Christmas. So very, very telling. So and I do appreciate the logic that is presented here. And if you read Yurugu, the ISIS papers, it all correlates. It all correlates with like basically like what it means to be white / European, suspected racist, white person. And he says here, Oh, and this is also very important to understand. Very important. Each European ethnic group retained specific customs of their ancestral lands and added it to the Christmas melting pot, which essentially makes the celebration of Christmas a pan-European holiday. So this is a global. This is a global thing. So I asked you, Black people, what are you celebrating when you celebrate Christmas? Some say they are doing this for the children because it makes them so happy. Then let us put to you another question. Is this what you want your children to be cultivated on? A glorification of the images of a European culture while neglecting your own, and you wonder why many Black youths are confused today. Take a good look at what has been done. What have you given your children to mentally feed upon is at best a carbon copy of a white fantasy which supports capitalist exploitation and keeps Black people under the bondage of Euro-American pressures. So I also want to read this part where he so he gets into the decoding of just the Christmas symbols. And the first one is the Christmas tree. And if you remember the ISIS papers, I think it was about fertility in that book as well. So I'm just gonna read the shout out that he gives, not the shout out, but the citation that he uses for gets from Dr. Francis Walsing. Yeah, that's fine. The Xmas tree, perhaps the most noted of the Yuletide symbols, is the Christmas tree, which dates back to the time when Romans decorated trees sacred to Bacchus, the Greek Dionysus, by hanging masks of fertility symbols upon them. As concerning Europeans and their chronic fertility crisis, Dr. Francis Wilson cites their numerical inadequacies and the crest theory of color competition. And this brilliant paper, as she discusses, one moment, everyone. In this brilliant paper, she discusses white people's lack of profanity and the natural process of procreation as opposed to that of the African and Asian. In other words, white people's inability to have babies as frequently as people of color can. Furthermore, vegetation was so sparse in relation to the total population of Europe that they generally decorated their houses with anything green they could find. In fact, some places they literally worship trees, especially the evergreen. Whites were amazed that anything in Europe could stay green year round, as did the evergreen tree. So they made it sacred to Freya, the German goddess of love, from which it derived from the name of the week, the day of the week known as Friday. So you're gonna learn that there's 3 days of the week that is covered in this section. Wednesday from Odin or Woden, which is given based off an English missionary who actually we're gonna get there. It's actually right here. Yeah, so epistemology, like the origin of words. And just white people, the power of myths as well, because a lot of these things are myth, but they really have some logic to them, because white people are a genetic minority and they do have a lot of anxieties about their abilities to produce more white children, and they put that in that's where their myths, a lot of their myths are embedded in, with that kind of coded messaging. So yeah, so this is where we learned the origin of the word Wednesday. So he says okay, so English missionary named Winfrid, later dubbed Saint Boniface, stopped some Germans from sacrificing their young prince to an oak tree. In those days, the Germans and Scandinavians considered the oak tree to be sacred to their war god Odin or Woden, from which the Americans derived the day of the week called Wednesday as a sign of divine approval of Winfried's intervention. The tale goes on to state that an evergreen miraculously sprung up out of the ground, and the Germans, who at the time were resolved to offer up their prince, now turned to decorating the tree. And there's more legends and involving the Christmas tree, but I thought the mistletoe one was very, very just interesting. And I think more Black people should be aware of the sort of behavior that they are celebrating when they get under that mistletoe, or where they go out and buy mistletoes. Because I doubt a lot of Black people understand what the mistletoe means. I definitely did it when I before I read this information. So mistletoe, the golden bough. Mistletoe, a parasitic plant with pale green leaves and bright berries, was known amongst ancient peoples as the golden bough. Possession of this golden bough was believed by many to provide aphrodisiac and other magical powers to the Druids. I think the Druids are white people, ancient white people. The Druids, members of a secret society of ancient Europe who divined by stabbing their victims and deciphering according to which the way blood would spurt. The mistletoe was very sacred. The bloodletting Druids trimmed their huts and caves with the golden bough during celebration of a 25th of December festival, at which time they lighted great fires on the tops of hills to announce the birthday of the god Sol. This was the moment when, after the winter solstice, he is said to have begun to increase and gradually to ascend. The humble, oh yeah, this one's quite hilarious. If you ask me, I am very insane. So I find a lot of this stuff funny because I'm just giving insight into how insane people who classify themselves as white, their history is, and the things that they find entertaining. It's just so bizarre to me. Anyways, I digress. The humble mistletoe plant in Scandinavian mythology is depicted as growing on the sacred oak of Odin, attended by a priest who referred to himself as King of the Woods, the personification of Juniper, the Roman sky god. Each candidate for the office of King of the Woods had to pluck a sprig of the golden bough from the higher branches of the sacred oak and then engage in the incomplete priest in mortal combat. This legend of the King of the Woods, a priest who stalked the oak grove in sinister gloom, his sword drawn, menacing those whom he suspected of coveting his exalted post, describes him as the priest who slew the slayer and shall himself be slain. What a fitting portrayal of the Northmen's main characteristic trait. This contemporaneous motley of creatures from far recesses of the North were so preoccupied with the violence of their brutish passions, they referred to their blessed abode as after death as Valhalla, the place where warriors fought one another all day long, after which their wounds were miraculously be healed at night as they banqueted in preparation for another day's battle. This was the Norsemen's idea of heaven. Now, isn't this insane that some ancient white people thought so-called heaven was just going to a place and fighting bloody battles for an eternity, and then at the end of the battle, your wounds are healed, and then you do it all over again? This was their heaven. So that's to give you some insight of the psychopathology we may be still dealing with in 2021. It is said in Danish folklore that the most beloved of their deities, Balder, the god of spring, was slain by a sprig of mistletoe hurled at him by his blind brother Hodder, who was inspired by Loki, the demon, and here you are today running around grabbing sisters and kissing them under mistletoe. The next time you are tempted to do this, ask yourself what sense does this make? Are you allowing yourself to be fooled into thinking that you need to get your woman under the symbol of a Scandinavian god to kiss her during the so-called Christmas season? Think about it. And yeah, we all should definitely think about it. This is another very, very telling one, the Yule log. And if you've seen the movie Quest for Fire, I think it correlates to that film a lot. I'll discuss it further after I read this bit. The Yule log. The Yule log was burned by Norsemen in adoration to the thunder god Thor. Thursday, so all of the, we're just speaking these white words, these white spells, these white code, and don't even know it. How many of us knew that Thursdays and Thor were related? I definitely didn't before doing some studying. Anywho, when they said road, I'm just gonna start over. The Yule log was burned by Norsemen in adoration to their thunder god Thor, Thursday, whom they said rode across the sky in a chariot drawn by two goats. The traditional burning of the Yule log was commemorated in more remote times, in celebration of the event when the African taught the European how to warm his cave. Another example of the European subconscious recollection of the African and fire is set forth in the legend of Sir Lancelot and the fire-spitting dragon. During what is referred to by some scholars as prehistoric times, Africans designated as Grimaldi went into Europe and subdued the ignorant tribes that dwelled there, carrying with them as they went torches of fire from before which the ignorant troglodyte fled in terror. Upon the standard borne by the conquering Africans was the sign of the dragon. Thousands of years later, this particular group of Africans had left Europe. The remnants of this event still tormented the European psyche. The fixation was so intense that somewhere between the 6th and 8th centuries of CE, the Common Era, legend has it that King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table were still going in search of a spitting dragon. But in actuality, they were going in search of the African who had just recently burned them again when the Moors invaded and conquered parts of Europe under the leadership of Gerbo Tariq in 711 CE. So again, we have just either white legends or white myths stemming in conflict with non-white people or incorrect feelings and beliefs about Black people, or just trauma involving what has happened between white and non-white people. It seems was it correct for the ancient Black people? This is all alleged. I don't know if this actually happened or not, but was it correct for ancient Black people to conquer ancient white people? No, but I don't think they were doing that per se. I think they were teaching them things. And if we taught a group of people fire, that's pretty constructive. Because before that, they weren't able to make fire, apparently, according to this documentation. And and it seems that they were in horrible conditions before Black people came along. This part right here, it seems so grim and just so scary. To me, I may be alone in my sensations here, but yeah, ancient Europe and just being amongst white people only just does not seem constructive at the time. Not that much, not that constructive in 2021 either. But continuing. During the age of the African circumnavigation of the world, it was a long time before they ventured into Europe. Again, often as the ships manned by ebony crews sailed along the Mediterranean Sea through the gloomy fog and mist off the coast of Europe, they could hear the eerie moanings, strange groanings, and barking sounds of its inhabitants in antiquity. The continent of Europe was considered by many people of color to be a bottomless pit filled with unimaginable horrors, a forbidden land inhabited by hellish demons. Some have even said that the word Europe means you're roped in. All right, and then we have the chimney is it's pretty short, and it has a lot of connotations to Christmas as well. So I guess I read it too. I read it. The chimney, unfortunately, many Black people who seem to be firmly uh, committed to your American culture are still teaching their children to look for Santa Claus to come down the chimney when in reality, most Black folks don't even own a chimney. The custom of looking for a fairy to come down the chimney is rooted in the Norse belief that the goddess Hartha entered the crude huts through the chimney, for at that time they had no windows. An Italian tale speaks of one La Bafana, an old witch who descended the chimney with gifts. In one hand, she carried a bell, which she rang to announce her arrival. In the other hand, she held a switch or a piece of coal, which she used to hit naughty children. All right, so now we're getting into the um, another white Jesus himself, Santa Claus. So powerful. And with the help of the Coca-Cola company, he's been seen worldwide as a white jolly fantasy creature. So Santa Claus, and again, etymology is decoded here really well. The designation Santa Claus comes from Sinterklaas, the Dutch name for Saint Nicholas, referred to by some thinking people as Saint Capitalist, a 4th century bishop of Asian Minor who became the Russian patron saint children, bankers, pawnbrokers, and thieves. The origin of Santa Claus hoax goes back to the time when many Northern European countries, ghosts, witches, trolls, vampires, and other demonic creatures were thought to stir about on oh yeah, okay, let's just go to on Christmas Eve. Wow. So they're thinking that so it seems a lot like Halloween, the origins of Christmas. It seems a lot like Halloween, where they thought spirits and negative entities were I don't know, real were out and about, it seems. Yeah, that's what it says. But just to be safe, I'll make sure I read, I didn't mess that up. The origins of the Santa Claus hoax goes back to the time in which many European countries, ghosts, witches, vampires, and other demonic creatures were thought to stir about on Christmas Eve. It was on this night that Satan or Santa, the demon/saint, for there was little differentiation between saints and demons in Europe at the time. Riding on a jackass or a goat will lead the demons in a merry rivalry as he shared with them the intoxicating substance of his wasaha bowl. According to German mythology, Santa/Satan first appeared as a hairy imp named Piz Nickel. In Holland and other European countries, the original Old Nick, another terminology for the devil, was depicted as a very stern person who rode across the frozen waste on the Satan's goat and left a whip instead of toys for naughty children. With the coming of European Christianity to the north, demon saint Old Nick evolved into Saint Nicholas, a bishop of Myra in Turkey, who lived sometime around 300 CE. He is said to have transported himself on a gray horse or a white jackass, an ancient Egyptian symbol of Typhon, the devil. Okay, so that is a little bit of the origins of Santa Claus, Old Saint Nick, anagram for Satan. One of the origins tales of Satan goes hand in hand with Christmas, which is very, very telling of what Black people are actually celebrating when we go get these Santa Claus decorations and Christmas decorations, all this nonsense that we do during these times. So I'm gonna skip ahead a little and keep reading a little bit more information of just how this all came to be. The legend says that Saint Nicholas gave the toys and gifts away for free. Well, if this is the case, how come people are still paying money for them every year? In 1822, Clement Seymour, an American minister and poet, first described Santa's fur-trimmed suit as his sleigh pulled by reindeer. The description appears in Moore's famous poem called "'Twas Was the Night Before Christmas." This poem firmly established Santa Claus on the American scene. The idea of his sled being drawn by 8 reindeer, reindeer comes from the Norse legend of Odin's white horse Sleipnir, who had 8 legs and was, according to this tale, the fastest horse in the world. All in all, the concept of the modern Santa Claus is a symbol of the poverty and selflessness of Europeans and selfishness of Europeans who only shared their gifts with one another once a year at Christmas, in sharp contrast to the traditional system of African Ujamaa, which encourages sharing with one's neighbor on a day-to-day basis. How ridiculous is the idea of sharing things once a year when people have needs of things every day? Ridiculous, evil, incorrect, but yeah, Christmas symbolizes the hogging of resources and showing off your resources once a year, and maybe giving some trickings in the form of material things, as well. Giving some of your resources away once a year. It's really, really, really Urugu minded, to say the least. Okay. Oh yeah, and again, the logic that is presented here is very, very authentic. Cause I even remember this. My victim mother, like, not showing me the gifts because she wanted me to think Santa had delivered them. So she would hide them in various places, and me and my victim unit siblings would go look for them. But it's just, in hindsight, it's really crazy, the insanity behind it. Hiding Christmas gifts, hiding them at other people's houses. The time and energy and effort it goes to do that is all very wasteful, in my opinion. And he has the similar logic here. The next time you are tempted to go sneaking around on Christmas Eve after the children are asleep, stop and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is the meaning of this insanity? Even though, like the rest of us, you have been brainwashed by the economic powers that be, you are still supposed to be an intelligent, accountable adult. So shake yourself of this foolishness and put aside these childish things. It is not too late for you. It is a better way. There's a better way, and that is very correct. Codify yourself. Codify one's existence, so we're not concerned with so-called holidays anymore, or spending all this, spending, going out, getting all this paper, wrapping up these gifts only for your house to be surrounded by empty boxes and toys that get played with for very little time and end up broken, and now you're upset. Now the victim parents are upset because the kid isn't playing with the toys, or the toys broken. They got to go back to the store, find the receipts. Just a whole bunch of stress comes from these horror days that we participate in. So he mentioned some of his logic here. He also mentions that some Black males will leave their cellmate during this time of the year because they don't want to deal with the stress of having to go get gifts and stuff. Go get. I gotta get back. I gotta get my so-called woman. I gotta get my partner this gift, or she's gonna not want to interact with me. Maybe not want to interact with me sexually. So I'm just gonna break up with her. I'm just gonna stage a fight. I'll be gone until Christmas is over. I'll pop back over before maybe New Year, because Black females are trained to not want to be alone on holidays. So Black male will come back along after the time spending wasting money has passed. So yeah, we gotta get out of the Christmas. We gotta get out of Christmas. Um, so continuing, let me see what else is there. Oh yeah, this is also very significant piece of information that I really hope gets into our brain computers and that we understand. The story is about. Wait, hold on. I think I gotta go back a little. Um, so where I want to start going from. Okay, I think I'll just start from here. Black people must come to understand that Christmas supports an economic power system which very seldom, if ever, works for our best interest. This inescapable fact brings us to another point of self-examination. Do you really have so much land, wealth, and power that you must take it and give it to the Europeans? Don't you have anything better to do with your resources than that? Will you continue to allow yourself to be commercially intimidated by the mass media, white people, into buying gifts at Christmas? Of course, there is nothing inherently evil about gift buying, but do you really need somebody to tell you when this should be done? Follow the logic. The story is about the story is told about a Jewish European who engaged himself in a religious argument with a European Christian. The Christian said to the Jew boy, wow, that sounds kind of interesting. The Christian said to the Jew boy, one thing I don't like about your people is that y'all don't believe in Jesus Christ. The Jew replied by saying, yes, we do. Every year on December 25th, my father comes home with big sacks of money, piles them up on the table, lifts his hands towards the heaven, and says, thank you, Jesus. This anecdote is a perfect illustration of who really gets the joy out of Christmas. In actuality, Christmas does not celebrate the birthday of Jesus, but rather it applauds, romanticizes, and solidifies pan-European economic domination and power over and power in the world. In other words, it supports the business of racism and white supremacy. It supports racism, white supremacy. And the final bits that we're gonna discuss, that I'm gonna share here before I see if folks want to chime in, is from Frederick Douglass. It's his quote, which when you hear this, it should be the nail in the coffin. Honestly, it should be all right. This is my last year celebrating. If you are celebrating Christmas this year, celebrate anything. Honestly, a slave, a non-white person, a prisoner of war, a victim of racism should not be celebrating anything except the elimination of racism and the production of justice, guaranteeing no one is mistreated and those who need help receive constructive help. So yeah, I'm just gonna read these final bits. In a speech of 1882, Frederick Douglass relates his experiences as a slave during the Christmas season. The days between Christmas Day and New Year's were allowed the slaves as holidays. During these days, all regular work was suspended, and there was nothing to do but keep fires and look after stock. We regarded this time as our own by the grace of our masters, and we therefore used it or abused it as we pleased. The holidays were variously spent. The sober industrial ones employ themselves in manufacturing corn brooms, mats, horse collars, and baskets, and some of these were very well made. Another class spent their time in hunting opossums, coons, rabbits, and other game. But the majority spent the holidays in sports, ball playing, wrestling, boxing, running, foot races, dancing, and drinking whiskey. And the latter and the latter mode was generally most agreeable to the master. A slave who would work during the holidays was thought by his master under serving. No, my bad. Undeserving of holidays. There was this simple act of continued work and accusation against slaves, and a slave could not help thinking that if he made $3 during the holidays, take he might make 300 during the holiday. Not to be drunk during the holidays was disgraceful. Not to be drunk during the holidays was disgraceful. We were induced to drink, I among the rest, and when the holidays were over, we were all staggered up from our filth and wallowing, took a long breath, and went away to our various fields of work, feeling upon the whole rather glad to go from that which our master had artfully deceived us into the belief was. So he's speaking like old English speaking combination. So it's really hard for me to follow this on top of my speech impediment. So I'm just gonna have to start this over from the beginning. We were induced to drink, I among the rest, and when the holidays were over, we were all staged up from our filth and wallowing, took a long breath, and went away to our various fields of work, feeling upon the whole rather glad to go from that which our master had artfully deceived us into the belief was freedom, back again the arms of slavery, back again to the arms of slavery. It was not that we had taken it to be, nor what it would have been had it not been abused. By us, it was about as well to be a slave to master as to be a slave to whiskey and rum. When the slave was not drunk, the slaveholder had no fear that the slave would escape to the north. It was a sober, thoughtful slave who was dangerous and needed the vigilance of his master to keep him a slave. And then I'm going to go into the conclusion. Finally, Christmas historically has no real religious significance except to the European world. As such, it has no real meaning to us as a people, for it does not culturally project us in a positive light. Therefore, its failure to meet this need means that it can only be working against our best interests. Understanding that there are still some immature members of our race. Of our Black collective, because we don't have a race. Only white people have a race, who feel they couldn't live out Christmas. We appeal to them to stop the wild spending and acting so foolishly during the Christmas season and divest themselves of this mania. The supposed happiness attained from the merry mess is too brief to pay such a physical, mental, spiritual, and economical price for. And then he goes on to suggest and mention like Kwanzaa and like a substitute for Black people to study or practice. But I would just say codify oneself, producejustice.com, and practice codification. And now I do have some notes. I'm just gonna scan through them because I mentioned most of them while I was reading over this. I do have further notes to go over. Yeah, I think the most important, well, not the most important part, but a important part was the Frederick Douglass quote where how the slaves were given these holidays. They were given Christmas and New Year's, and they're allowed to party. They're allowed to have fun basically, and they began to associate fun with freedom. Being able to just associating fun with freedom, and that's what's going on in 2021. We think because we're allowed to twerk and crip walk, that we are free and that we are not under a system of white supremacy. But we definitely are. We should not be doing no dancing Christmas parties or anything like that. No celebrating. of any sort until we solve the race problem. It's quite simple. Christmas meaning the there's a lot of things there. They said Christ child earlier. I read that Christ child means white child, and they also I don't know if I read this part, but he also referred to white people refer to themselves and their myths and their legends as unconquered sons, and I decode that as again white people. The study of words, the understanding of words is very, very important. Valhalla, the afterlife, ancient afterlife concept for white people is very, very telling of just how much violence is celebrated and actually appreciated by white people. They seem to have a strong connection to destruction, violence of all sorts. And basically, all in all, Saturnalia equals Christmas. Christmas equals white people once upon a time, living in caves, hunting down wild animals, raping each other, grunting, woofing, woofing, literally woofing, like barking. And then we see that behavior coming back. Actually, white people like making animal sounds. I may play a clip showing that today, but yeah, Christmas, deafness, my terminology for it, but Christ mice, Xmas should not be celebrated. I hope this was constructive. I hope I didn't jammer on. I hope something was learned here. And with that, I think that's all my notes. Codification would be constructive instead of celebrating this the holiday, so-called holiday. So with that being said, I'll open the floor for comments. Folks have things to share, please do.
Yeah. Like the beginning of the program, when the young male was talking about how his mother had lied to him, and we had to think to ourselves, like, do you want to start off your relationship with your offspring lying about these so-called holidays, etc., Christmas, Thanksgiving, and really look into the history and what are you so-called celebrating? Why? For what? I learned a lot from this, definitely about the part of mistletoe. I didn't know that. And another part of this, when Frederick Douglass, his part, when he was talking, yes, that's going on today. We are buying things that, buying stuff, aka showing off, buying these expensive games and stuff for entertainment, and we're feeding right into the system of racism, white supremacy, entertaining ourselves and not focusing on the problem, not sitting quietly and just thinking about the problem and how to solve it. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Miss B.
Yeah, I'll just say that we didn't have much in the way of growing up, like terms of monetary things like that. So I never really had my family never really tried to convince us, like me and my two brothers actually, that or attempted brothers, that we had anything that Santa Claus, some sort of phantom obese man called Santa Claus, was delivering things, etc. So it was always a case of, if they asked us what we wanted for so-called holidays, etc., so-called Christmas, she'd just give us a little, let us down gently about, we really can't afford that this year. We really can't afford that most years. So yeah, and I guess like the point of this broadcast, like this segment of the broadcast anyway, is that it's just not true, is it? The whole myth of Santa Claus, etc., Saint Nicholas, whatever we want to call him, Father Christmas, isn't true. So anytime someone asks, I mean, eventually, like what Helen B and what 05 was just saying, eventually you're gonna have to be honest with your offspring that he isn't real anyway, and this whole Christmas thing is a sham anyway. At some point they are going to find that out, so you may as well just start off your relationship with your offspring an honest one. And the pressure that I find when that other people put you under when you realize the truth, and you want to even attempt to live your life in some way that resembles the fact that you understand that it's not true. The pressure that other people put you under is immense. I just like to go into the question lane immediately with people like that. I just ask a couple of questions. I'll say, why should I celebrate, and see what they say to that. I'll say, why do I have to celebrate? If it's a white person asking me why I don't so-called celebrate Christmas, the first thing I ask them, I say, do you practice racism, white supremacy? Does the system of racism still exist? And then I'll refer them back to the same question again. Why should I celebrate? You give me a good reason to celebrate, and I'll start celebrating. But I guess when they answer that question, usually in some sort of honest way, when you put it to them like that, then they kind of understand why you definitely shouldn't be celebrating, especially as a non-white person. You don't have anything to celebrate, behind the camp wire, right? You don't have anything to celebrate whilst you are a slave to the system of racism, white supremacy.
Precisely.
Oh, can I have you guys?
Yes,
Oh, thanks. I thought that the book is really, really interesting and probably something useful for like people to read. I've heard about the Odin and like the Norse mythology, and something that I thought was really interesting that also adds on to what you were saying, like the glorification of violence, is that in Norse mythology, or like I guess when men died from natural causes or something, they would hold, if they knew they were dying from natural causes like diseases or something, they would like put some sort of weapon in their hand so that they could trick the Odin. I think he's like the god, the Norse mythology god, because they believe that there's no there's no honorable death that's not based in like warfare, which I think is really interesting, and it adds on to the Yurugu, that the glorification of like destruction and death, the idea that dying of natural causes is shameful for a man. I think that's really interesting. And I liked the part where the speaker was saying how like a lot of Black people don't even have money, and the money that they do spend on these kids for Christmas, they're not even getting the credit for it. So the child is, even when the parents or the attempted parents have the money to potentially pay for this from whatever work they did, it's not even being acknowledged. It's still, the child is still only thinking that, oh well, this came from this fat white guy, which I think is really, really interesting. And also just the whole idea that all of the, like, I liked the part where you were reading about how the names of the weeks even have are all come from, I guess what he was saying is like this type of pan-European mythology. How that was really, really interesting, because even though like some some distinct group of Europeans lost whatever parts of their culture they had, they all came together to like have this like super culture that reigns over like all people. And I think that's really, really interesting, and it makes you really think about all of the languages that are lost and the type of mythology and understanding that comes from those words and those languages that we'll never be able to know because so many of us only speak European languages. I think that's all I had to say for now. But yeah, that's a really, really interesting book.
Yeah, I also appreciated just understanding and learning the occult, the hidden meanings behind these words and the hidden origins of these words. And yeah, pan-European makes a lot of sense. The white race is one giant gang, and they may call themselves Irish, Scandinavians, British, Europeans, Canadians, Slavs, Russians. They may call themselves whatever, but at the end of the day, they're a part of the white gang, and yeah, their culture, their existence, what they want to happen on planet Earth is what happens, and they currently dominate and control everyone non-white. That goes for so-called Chinese, and also everyone classified as Black. Just yeah, just totally under control. And I also appreciated this part right here where he it's like the little joke between um the European Christian and the European and the Jewish European, because a lot of people who classify who call themselves Jewish who are also white, they definitely benefit off Black people. Black people go like Ash just mentioned, we have to have no money, but yet we spend hundreds of billions of dollars on Christmas every single year. During this holiday season, we spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. And this was said in this text in earlier bits of the chapter. And this was written, and this was quoted in 1978, I believe. So just imagine how much how much that has increased now with all the technology that Black people have been trained to want to distract them their reality with. So I'm pretty sure it has increased, but they don't have the money, and white people who call themselves Jewish, they benefit. They don't get on their knees and thank Jesus because Jesus has allowed them not to go homeless for another month. They get on their knees and thank Jesus. They don't get on their knees and thank Jesus at all, actually, but they laugh and snicker with each other, knowing that their concept of Jesus has allowed them to dominate and control the planet, control the value of money. And if they are supporting Jesus, it's coded in a whole nother way. It's supporting that white genetic survival, that need to make white children. And that's gonna be one of our first clips. The need to make white children. That's what Christmas is also all about. More white children and white genetic survival. He also he mentions Jesus being a Black male sacrifice, well, Black male killed by white people for wanting to be treated differently, treated correctly. He mentions that in this text as well, and that's something that also Dr. Francis Wilson covers. So yeah, the correlation again is there. So another reason we shouldn't celebrate Christmas because it celebrates white people killing a Black male in order for them to keep the status quo going. So
I was going to say that I do know, or used to know, two attempted non-white parents that actually remortgaged their house because they were so embarrassed they couldn't afford so-called Christmas presents for their offspring, and they wanted expensive stuff for so-called Christmas period. They couldn't afford it, so they actually remortgaged their house. And I suspect they're probably not alone. I suspect up and down this all over the world, people are doing stupid things like that. I mean, for what? Just to show off. Probably just to show off to other Black people or other white people who really don't care. The white people really don't care about what other Black people have got. Not really, really they were just getting it to show off to other Black people. A lot of put themselves in more debt just to give some money to someone else who just doesn't care about you, in order to lie to your children, your attempted children, about where the gifts actually came from. The whole system is insanity on top of insanity on top of insanity.
Indeed. And then you have black males, black females who attempt to steal during these holiday seasons and end up in greater confinement. Some have even killed, trying to rob people, kill a person, spend the rest of their existence in greater confinement, and then all for what? Trying to get my kids some presents, man. Got, they need them air forces and all the stuff black people buy. Just a long list. Just throw anything on the list. And very, very, yeah, tragic and silly. Tragic and silly. We like what? That sounds serious, and you're doing something that's serious for for Christmas presents. Serious about silly things. People classify it as non-white, racially classified as black. I have been really sabotaged. It's really sad, tbh.
Yeah, that's really sad to potentially like to remortgage your home and potentially put yourself at risk for being homeless just to like that that's so just brain trash because you're not even thinking about what about the next year? How are you gonna afford those same presents for the next year? Like I have someone who I know similar. She makes very little, but when I talked to her, she said, "Oh, I never spend less than $1,000 for my children every Christmas." This is somebody who is a single parent, Black female, who does not make a lot of money. And it's really shocking just because you're putting that mindset onto those kids. Those kids aren't born with the mindset that they need all of these things. But it's like you're projecting that onto them.
One of the many dangers of allowing children to be exposed to these white concepts, these white ideas and ideologies that have no counter racist logic to them, but actually a racist logic that says, hey, believe in a white guy flying through the sky with reindeers dropping off presents. Believe in that. And then make TV shows about it. And then make songs about it, make TikToks about it, and then dress up. I hate to report this. I'm not gonna name names because she's a victim. She's a fellow victim. But she had a whole Grinch themed party, for her young offspring who can't be more than older than 11, 12. But yeah, they are dressed up as the Grinch, getting fake Grinch tattoos on them. And Grinch can be decoded as a Christmas nigger. He's surrounded by the white who's. He's the only person, the only nigger slave who doesn't want to like celebrate and get with the program. So he's mistreated because of that, and he behaves very victimized because of that. Anywho, it's just so tragic to see the indoctrination going on and the heavy indoctrination. I'm talking like Grinch cupcakes, Christmas cupcakes, the whole outfit, the whole hats, everything. I also saw a video of a Grinch character climbing through the window of black children and scaring them. I am not gonna play the footage because that'll get us thrown off of YouTube again. But yeah, serious about silly things. It reminds me of the video we saw during Halloween with the black kids being chased by Freddy Krueger. It's the same thing, but just shows me how powerful the system is and how it continues to grow. It's so powerful, this system. And yeah, I'm just glad to be. I hope this information here is constructive and motivates at least one person to throw down those stockings. You put it down, put down them hats with the little ball on it. Put it down. We don't need it any longer. Follow the logic, please.
And also think about the money, the credit cards that people are running up debt on. I mean, so much money. The credit card business, they make so much money off of us. The holidays, trying to keep up with the Joneses, aka keep up with other white people, showing off to each other.
So I think that's a good segue into I think I could combine this question with what Helen B wants to share about just preparing, maybe using instead of the money that we would spend on Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, and all these other horror days, like people have brainwashed us to celebrate, to train. Trained us to celebrate. Instead of spending money there, how about we spend some money and just preparing for emergencies, preparing for whatever horrible things the system will throw our way, because the system is not designed to keep us comfortable. It's designed to terrorize us. So how about instead of spending money on Christmas, $1,000 a month, that could go a lot into, some constructive nutrients, some constructive tools to keep one prepared during times of emergency. So I think that's and I'm gonna say combine the question. There's a question in the chat from Coco Jojo. I don't know if it's a male or a female, but Coco Jojo says, what should non-white people who are classified as Black do if if WW3 starts? I would like to know you guys' opinion. So we can answer this question after Helen B shares what she wants to share about emergency preparedness.
Well, to answer that question, I don't know what World War III, I don't even know what that means, but we are already at war. We are already in the middle of a war today. And until the system of racism, white supremacy is eliminated. Okay, now going on to the preparedness. My suggestion, instead of, and always suggestion, but instead of wasting time, money, and energy on non-constructive things like celebrating so-called holidays, etc., we should, how much water do you have? Do you have a first aid kit? Candles, flashlight, canned food, vegetables, tuna, chicken, salmon, beans, rice. Do you have batteries for your flashlight? Have an e-fund instead of spending money on people that 9 times out of 10 might not like you, don't like the gift that you give them, wind up regifting it or giving it away or what have you. Do you have a generator? Do you have a water purifier? Even if you're not thinking, okay, I don't want you to think doomsday, right? But anything could happen. Things happen in life. We lose our employment due indirectly or directly in result of racism, white supremacy. So why not be prepared for those things? When there's a storm or something, you don't want to be running out with everybody else trying to grab the last little bit of something if you've been preparing from day one, a little bit at a time. You don't have to buy everything at once. When there's a sale, buy more than 2 or 3 of whatever items. But yeah, that's just a suggestion. Oh, also get an old-fashioned radio, the type that you need batteries, because if the electricity is turned off, whether directly, indirectly, because of lack of funds, or because white people just cut it off, or because of a storm, you want to be able to know what's going on. You want to be able to hear the news. Two-way walkie-talkie, that's always helpful. Gas, ammo, never know. Anybody else want to add anything? Anything I'm missing?
Wow. No, I think that was very, very, very a very constructive suggestion. I don't know any Black people with generators. I definitely would like to acquire one. But also I heard that Army surplus stores are a great place to get equipment, surviving equipment, emergency preparedness equipment. Yeah, and I think you have a lot of logic by what you said. You don't want to be one of the many who will be out, panicking to get supplies if something bad does happen. And if system-wide supremacy, bad things are designed to happen, incorrect things, horrific things,
Exactly.
violent things, flooding with people walking down the streets and knee-waist water and waist-high water getting shot at by white people hunting them, Katrina. So be prepared. In most emergencies, it would be best if we don't have to go out, and it would be even better if you have food in your dwelling to survive for a while. So please save some money. Don't go out and get that PS5 if you really can't afford it. You know, if you don't have a generator, get that before you get that PS5 or the new Air Maxes or Nikes or whatever people are wearing. I don't know. You guys get it.
Yeah, that was a very constructive list there, Helen B. It was very comprehensive, very comprehensive. I don't think I could add anything to that list. Maybe if I just thought about it a little longer, but I can't actually think of anything that I could add to that list. But yeah, and in answer to the question, you also took the words right out of my mouth. We're already at war, right? We're already at war. As far as I know, I was at war from the day that I was born, from before I was born. Right,
Correct.
my attempted parents were already at war, so I'm not sure what people mean, what anyone means when they say so-called World War III. I'm really not sure. Maybe the person that asked the question could probably clarify the question. If they're not talking about the race war that already affects us, what is the other war that they're talking about?
Okay, I'll answer the question. I'm gonna just compensate for this world for the words WW3. I'm just gonna assume Coco Jojo is referring to another large scale battle involving large arms and multiple so-called countries destroying each other at not in the manner that we see in Afghanistan, where it's kind of out of mind, out of sight, but you know, it will be more maybe so-called close at home. So I'm just trying to compensate for that WW3, because yeah, we are in a war 24/7, a large scale war amongst people who believe in white supremacy and people who want white supremacy to be eliminated. And white people.
Well,
yeah,
in that case, then, if that's what the person who's asking the question is referring to, then really, when it comes down to it, you will have to defend yourself as best as you can. If there's something like right outside your front door, that type of war, if I'm understanding from your clarification, then it will be you're just going to have to defend yourself in whatever way you can. And if this war involves the white supremacists, then, you know, non-white people, we've been at the mercy of the white supremacists for centuries, some say in millennia, right? If they wanted to exterminate us before then, they could have done it a long time ago. They could have done it yesterday. I mean, you know, so there's not very much you can actually do. Someone said they were going to let off a nuclear bomb and it was going to hit, right? And it's going to hit where I am tomorrow or in the next 20 minutes. What the hell can I do if they're going to set off a nuclear bomb and it's going to hit here, Stoke Newton, Hackney, where I am right now? What's going to happen? Nothing. I'm probably going to die. So there's not very much you can actually do, or there's not. Or I'll just refer to myself. There's not very much I think I could do about a situation like that with the types of weapons that they're probably going to be using now. You know, if there was a war in 10 years from now, or even a kind of war that I think they're describing now, I mean, the sophisticated weaponry, that the germ warfare, drones, different types of weapons, all types of weapons of mass destruction, right? You're not, yeah. I think I'll just end it right there. We're at the mercy of the white supremacists.
Yeah, I would say if a large scale battle does occur where there's airstriking and air bombing major cities that I'm familiar with, I just hope I don't get bombed. I hope I don't get drafted, but if I do, hey, death is better than living in this system. My bad. Death is better than existing in a system of white supremacy anyway. So sayonara. I hope I don't see you later, because I don't want to come back to planet Earth until the problem has been solved. If I die, so that's pretty simple. Yeah, that's my answer to the question. There's only one war, the race war, and that's the system of white supremacy. Racism, white supremacy. Racism is a war against non-white people, 24/7, all day, all year.
Exactly. That's the most important war. And if we eliminate that one first, the whole global system of racism, white supremacy, and replace that with a system of justice, then they wouldn't be a so-called WW3.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah. No more WW, no more war worlds ever. So Candy Mix says, have you ever heard of Jonte Loven? And he says that it's a Danish thing. I got you can post a Wikipedia link if you like. But he says it basically says that no one is better than anyone. Yep. Logically, no one is better than anyone. Logically, that I suspect. But 2021, the way the system is set up, the way things work on planet Earth, involving how people interact with people, white people behave in a manner where I'm led to believe that they do think they're better than non-white people. Even if some white people may believe that no one is better than anyone, those white people aren't doing enough to solve the race problem. So I would ask them, what are they doing? What are those white people doing to solve the problem and to produce justice, and what hasn't been done before? All right, I think we could get into the clips, the decoding of clips. Go ahead, Ash.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that I was unmuted. I just was when Smoking Damages was talking, it reminded me of when he was saying that they could like drop a nuclear bomb or something and you would be powerless to do anything. It reminds me of, remember in Hawaii when like the U.S. government sent out like an alert on everyone's phone that there was like some sort of nuclear bomb that was going to happen in like 30 minutes or even less time, I think, than that. And it was an accident. Like, it's very real how powerless you would be in that moment to do. And I'm sure the people who live there were probably overwhelmed with, imagine the thoughts that are going through your head. You're thinking that you're literally about to die right now because somebody quote unquote made a mistake or something. It's very interesting that we really are powerless.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them were probably thinking the Air Jordans and the PS5 I just bought yesterday was really not important. Really, sometimes when you're staring death in the face, sometimes you really kind of appreciate things that are important and the things that you've been doing that have been really, really frivolous. And I can imagine a lot of people when they're facing in situations like that, they think, well, yeah, all this kind of frivolous, stupid stuff I was doing and all these petty arguments I was doing, I should really have been solving real problems and I should have been doing some really constructive things in my life. We all know what we need and what we want, and we know the difference. But we're so convinced by this system that we're so distracted every day, and yeah. I mean, hopefully they don't do this World War III thing in the way that the questioner suggested it. But you never know. It's looking likely that they probably will.
Agree. It is looking like they're the white supremacists. We can never predict what they're up to, what they're planning. So he has another question from Coco Jojo. Is it correct for people classified as Black to practice Islam? I would say it's correct for Black people to practice whatever is logical and whatever produces constructive results. That's my answer to the question. Any other folks would like to chime in, please do so.
Yes, it is. I completely agree. It is correct for every non-white person to practice what will give them a constructive result. What is it you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? That's if you're going to eat food. That's if you're going to drink something. That's if you're going to go out and buy something. That's whatever quote unquote religion you want to practice. Just apply those four suggestions that Neely Fuller suggested there. I think you shouldn't go wrong if you really apply those things.
Alrighty, I think we're gonna get into the more traditional rips portion. Now please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Before we get into it, I'm gonna play a sound clip / promotion of the concepts of counter racism, producing justice. So one moment while I get this on the screen.
There are 4 types. There are 4 types, four forms of it that you can get to by going to producejustice.com. You'll see it in the textbook, the forms that it takes. And that is black people's biggest drawback when it comes from not only not having a code, but not really being focused on countering and eliminating racism as the reason for being. Whereas the white supremacists, their whole reason for being, for existing, is white supremacy. They have no other reason for even existing. This is why they're in such opposition to anybody changing it. Because if you take white supremacy away from a white person who believes in white supremacy, you've taken everything. You haven't just taken something. And it's the same way with black people. You take away the ability for a black person to show off to another black person, that black person is now suicidal.
Alrighty, so before we close out on the European holidays and mental genocide portion involving Christmas, I do want to play this clip involving I mentioned the author referred to white people as barking and having a really interesting relationship with dogs. And this is something that was also discussed in the ISIS papers, as well as the Urugu, when we learned the origins of just some white mythology, like the founding and creation of Rome, where we have Romulus and Remus, who were two small white boys who were breastfeeding from a wolf, and the wolf took care of the boys, and they were able to survive and live to found Rome. This is from this is their lore. This is their what some subscribe their high affection to dogs are. And this is also possibly why dog spelled backwards is God, which is why black people shouldn't even use the word God, as far as I'm concerned, because it's it's tainted, or tainted. Even that's a word I probably shouldn't use. It's been corrupted and made to mean it's been coded to mean something incorrect. You know, the incorrect relationship that white people have with dogs. So white people were spending their times being very animal-like, you know, barking in caves, hunting each other like animals with clubs, and just living very brutishly. And in 2021, that behavior is seeping back in. There's a movie called Wolf coming out soon, where you know it's like a rehab center for people who like think they're animals. We have the whole zoophilia thing going on. We have the whole furry thing going on, where people have a high association with animals, an affinity for animals. So it's only going to get worse. And this is the example, one example here. Let me get it on the screen.
Excuse me, teacher. Could we please turn off the lights? The LED artificial light bulbs are harmful to my natural wolf eyes, which change color depending on my mood. What do you mean you don't believe me? They turn yellow when I'm happy, red when I'm really, really angry, and green when I'm on the hunt. Speaking of mealtime, you look like you could suffice for my afternoon wolf snack. But I will refrain because my mother said if I get sent to the principal's office one more
I won't subject you all to the full video, but it is quite bizarre. It's hilarious to some, disturbing to many. So that concludes this portion. We're gonna get into the more traditional rips. So I'm gonna